All right, we are going to get this meeting started. We are recording this for distribution after the meeting is complete. I want to welcome everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to this RFP pre-proposal meeting for the Buffalo Sewer Sidney Lark and Edison Martha offline storage tanks. Just a disclaimer to before we get into this meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to exchange general information concerning these projects. All information contained in this presentation is for information only, so please read the RFP thoroughly. If detailed technical questions are asked, they will be taken under advisement. No attempt will be made to answer them at this meeting. Although if there are questions that come up, we do encourage you to include those questions in the chat, and we will respond to those in writing via addendum. If discrepancies are discovered between the presentation and the contract documents, the information in the contract documents, including the RFP, will govern. Any official response to questions raised at this meeting, if need to be answered or clarified, will be in the form of a response via a future addendum, which will be issued as soon as practical. And then lastly, oral statements made at this meeting may not be relied upon and are not legally binding on Buffalo Sewer Authority unless an addendum is issued as a result thereof. Few housekeeping items. This is an online meeting. We have a number of speakers on deck to go through the overall scope. So I kindly ask everyone to have your microphones muted. Please utilize the chat feature if you have any questions so that we can capture those and issue a written response. This meeting is being recorded. And slides will be distributed as an addendum so that those that who are unable to attend will have access to this information, and through Teams, closed captioned is available. Before we go any further, I do want to take roll call of all folks who are not speakers who are attending this call. So I'm going to call out your first name, and I ask you to please state your full name and the company that you're representing. First off is Andrew.
It's Andrew Kletke with McMahon & Mann Geotechnical Engineers.
Angela.
Angela Hintz with J.M. Davidson Engineering.
Aria.
Aria Harris with T.Y. Lin.
David.
David Barnes, Jacobs Engineering.
Dax.
Dax Pike with Arcadis and the program management team.
Rebecca.
Rebecca Carmine Shaw, Hazen and Sawyer.
Chris Chapman.
Chris Chapman with Wendell Companies.
Brenna.
Brenna Donovan with Arcadis.
Gregory.
Hi, Greg Heath with AECOM.
Katie.
Katie Hook with Hazen and Sawyer.
Jamie Davidson.
Jamie Davidson, JM Davidson Engineering.
Judy.
Judy Beckwith with Lou Engineers.
Mary.
Mary Knox with Jacobs Engineering.
Heather.
Heather Landis, Hazen and Sawyer.
Mark Lang.
Mark Lang with Black and Beach.
Mark Lenz.
Mark Lenz, Hazen and Sawyer.
Mike Tirana.
Mike Tirana, JM Davidson.
Kate M.
Kate Mignon, AECOM.
Mike Miller,
Mike Miller, CHA Consulting.
Paul,
Paul McGarvey with GHD.
Michelle Perkins,
Michelle Perkins Palmer with AECom.
Christopher Rank,
Chris Rank with Black and Veatch.
Robert Lannon,
Bob Lannon with GHD.
Stephen Vinci,
Steve Vinci with Briley Associates Underground Engineers.
Tatiana,
Tatiana Proctor, TY Lin.
Beth,
Beth Teig, AECom.
Tim,
Tim Healy with TY Lin.
okay. And then I see a few numbers that have called in. I'm going to call out the last 4 digits. Please state your name and company. Last 4 digits ending in 8878. Last 4 digits ending in 9554.
George
Please
Kansas.
state. Go ahead. Sorry, 9554. Please state your name and company. I spoke over you.
That's okay. This is George Kansas with HDR.
Thanks, George. 1717. Last 4 digits in 1717. Please state your name and company. Okay, last 4 digits, 6412.
Good afternoon, Robert O'Connell with AECom.
And then last 4 digits, 7400. Okay, so we have 8878, 1717, and 7400, who I will identify during this call or after this call. Besides our speakers, anyone's name that I did not call, please introduce yourself. Okay. Thanks all. We'll move on. And I'll track any folks that join the call and ask them in the chat to state their name. Joined by us and who will be speaking today, including myself. My name is Walt Walker. I am the program manager for TY Lin, formerly Greeley and Hansen, and Nick Friedlander, the Sidney Lark project manager. As part of our program, capital projects program management team, we're also joined by Arcadis, Nadia Mugisha, the deputy program manager, and Steve Bigelow, the project manager for Edison Martha OLS, and then for Buffalo Sewer, Rosalie Nogel, principal sanitary engineer. So over the next half hour, 40 minutes, we've gotten through the welcome and introductions. I'll briefly turn it over to Rosie for a program overview of Queen City Clean Waters, the long-term control plan as it was formerly known. We'll move on to project overviews for Sidney Lark and Edison Martha. Nadia and I will close things out with some specific contractual requirements to be aware of, including design standards and guidelines. And then we'll leave it off with closing remarks, reminders related to the RFP, and then offer a few open minutes for any questions that folks want to put in the chat, which we will respond to via writing in an addendum. Okay, Rosie.
So, as Walt mentioned, Queen City Clean Waters is our rebranded long-term control plan. We needed to make a pivot in regard to the projects and really reintroduce the long-term control plan to the public. And in doing so, we really thought it was necessary to put forward what our vision is of clean waters and a resilient Buffalo, and state our mission of safeguarding public health and the environment while fostering strong community partnerships, creating meaningful workforce opportunities, and driving lasting impact for future generations in the city of Buffalo. Just trying to really state what we're trying to do here, rather than using the very technical term of long-term control plan, which the public does not exactly understand or embrace. And so we're looking at over $1 billion of investment over roughly the next 15 years. Our final project, currently we're looking at a deadline, a regulatory deadline of December 31st, 2040. And we're looking at a little over 50 cities throughout, or 50 sites throughout the city of Buffalo, and that includes 3 projects at the Bird Island Treatment Plant that are currently in various states of construction and design. But as for this presentation today, really what we're looking at is 2 of 10 underground storage facilities. And with that.
Okay. Thank you, Rosie. So now we're going to get into the discussion of the specific items related to scope. First, want to cover just some key dates as it relates to the procurement schedule. So signed and sealed submissions, sealed submissions must be received no later than Tuesday, March 4th. Before 10 a.m. Those hard copy submissions must be delivered to Rosaline Nogle at Buffalo Sewer Authority's office at City Hall. This timeline also includes the digital PDF submission of the proposal, and the technical proposal and cost proposal must be delivered for the hard copies and separate sealed envelopes. Shortly afterwards, interviews with shortlisted consultants will occur, estimated the week of March 24th. Consultant award at the Buffalo Sewer May board meeting will occur. Target notice to proceed is July of 2025. As these 2 projects, Sidney Lark and Edison Martha, are part of the Queen City Clean Waters but long-term control plan, and a hard consent decree schedule, design schedule, and maintaining and getting ahead of the design schedule is of extreme importance. And so the completions of the designs are outlined here for Sidney and Lark, no later than March 19th, 2027, and Edison Martha OLS no later than November 20th. So just to reiterate, these are consent decree projects, and schedule is extremely critical. So getting into project overviews, for those unfamiliar, we use the term offline storage tank in this title. An offline storage tank holds extra water when the sewer is full, and then drains it to be treated when there's space. We will talk about the real-time control structure, specifically as it relates to Sidney and Lark. And a real-time control structure contains sewer chambers with automatic gates that store and release water to prevent overflows when the Bird Island treatment facility is ready. And real-time controls technology has been used in projects across the city of Buffalo for Buffalo Sewer over the past decade, many of which are currently under construction. So in the Sidney Lark project overview, I will turn it over to Nick from the program management team.
Thanks, Walt.
Appreciate that intro. Welcome everybody. So here I'll go ahead and talk about Sidney Lark OLS, alternative one, and we'll get into why there's multiple alternatives here in a minute. But here you can see the image on the right is of the Sidney Lark project area in blue. You see the outline of the tank there. The footages have changed slightly since this image was created, as well as the tank volumes for the PER, initial PER, as we got into 30% design. We can talk more about that. So yeah, location here, northwest corner of Sidney Street and Lark. This concrete offline storage tank is going to hold approximately 1 million gallons of sewage volume here. That volume had dropped slightly from the initial PER when we got into 30% and started doing some detailed modeling. You could see these 4 parcels, the 5 rather parcels in blue are the city-owned Buffalo properties, and we've also got a couple other properties to the south and east that are owned by the city of Buffalo that we're going to utilize for temporary storage for laydown area there. So getting into a little bit of the design, here we're going to have a diversion chamber along the Humboldt Parkway sewer on the west side of the page there. We're going to have a new 48-inch gravity sewer that influent that flows into the tank. A key consideration for this particular location for this project was utilizing gravity for dewatering. Wanted to avoid any need for pump station and future maintenance of pumps. So coming out of the tank, we have a 36-inch gravity effluent running north along Lark Street. For this particular alternative, based on the tank depth, the installation of that sewer is approximately 35 to 40 feet deep. Thus, we had prescribed micro tunneling operation here due to the proximity of those neighbors, as you can see on the image. So the tank dimensions came out to about 110 by 130. You can see the 125 by 140 on the image to the right. You know, when we got into the kind of the constructability review, the extents of that were a little too much, so we had to pull back the tank to 110 by 130 and increase the depth there. So just some operational details. This tank will store combined flow during rain events. Once the capacity in the Scajaquada tunnel interceptor is available, there's a gate that will modulate and allow flow to leave the tank. So again, gravity dewatering is extremely important to BSA, and that's what we've prescribed here. Move on. So I'm actually going to just go ahead and share my screen in PDF so everyone can see this clearly. So here is the site plan for alternative 1. Here is the diversion chamber. As mentioned, we are getting into the curb and sidewalk a little bit here. So replacement of the sidewalk and curb, as well as pavement restoration along the influent. Here we're going to have a manhole to turn 90 degrees into the tank. An important feature of these tanks is the flushing, the tipping buckets here. So we've got 4 runways with 4 sets of tipping buckets here, where these will also be removable concrete slabs. So you're going to be able to one day, if needed, pull out the tipping buckets for maintenance activities. Here is shown a small utility building that will house the equipment for the electrical equipment, as well as the water lines to supply the tipping buckets. Here we've shown a temporary access, and here construction entrance. And just an important thing to note in this site is we are in the middle of a neighborhood. So as I said before, the extents of the constructability of the tank were definitely top of mind. here. There's a small garage structure. In fact, the neighbor up in here has actually been using this lot as a back driveway. So that neighbor might be a little unhappy with us here, but I don't think he's supposed to be using that as a driveway nonetheless. And then leaving the tank in the northeast corner here is where we've prescribed the micro tunneling operation, and that comes here about 400 feet to the south of Northland Avenue. And here we've prescribed a vortex style drop shaft to get down to the Skodacta tunnel interceptor. Nadia, you can take the screen back for the next slide. So some design considerations. This was essentially an update from the PER to the 30% design. We reduced the volume of the tank from 3.26 million gallons to 0.85 million gallons due to the detailed hydraulic modeling that occurred between the PER and 30% stage. Peak flow rates are 75 million gallons in the 48-inch conduit, the 42 million gallon capacity out of the effluent 36-inch line. The tank dimensions are optimized here is exactly the 123 by 103.5. Obviously this would need to be looked at as detailed design progresses. The tipping bucket design, we've got 4 dipping buckets as I discussed, each with the capacity of 1,460 gallons. And that these buckets have been coordinated with the manufacturers to ensure that there would be adequate flushing in the flushways. Ventilation is definitely top of mind for BSA on this project, considering the proximity to the neighbors, the residents here in this neighborhood. So we're looking at a 30-inch vent to handle about 7,000 CFM of air displacement during peak wet weather. And obviously that would need to be looked at further as detailed design progressed. And then value engineering, any additional evaluation for micro tunneling versus open cut of the 36-inch sewer would be necessary once the detailed design is finalized and we know how deep we're actually going here. So you can move to the next slide. So moving into alternative 2. As I discussed, there was an effort to, update the modeling, rerun some scenarios, and that's how we came down to our about 1 million gallon storage volume for the OLS structure. And, during this evaluation, essentially on the 5th largest storm of the year, this structure was only being used as a pass-through, as an interconnect. So we kind of took a step back and said, hey, do we really need to build this massive tank if the 5th largest event is really not storing much of any volume? It's just using it as an interconnection. There may not be a need for a tank. So we created alternative 2, looking at a real-time control structure. So this alternative would include the diversion chamber as previously discussed. However, the modulating gate that was within the OLS structure will now be placed in that diversion chamber, and that will act as our real-time control structure. And coordination with SCADA and remote monitoring will be required there. So the location is the same. We would like to utilize at least one of those lots that I mentioned before, one of those 5 lots to house some electrical equipment. We're envisioning just a small panel, outdoor panel, similar to like a maintenance of traffic panel out there. No building would be required on this alternative. Some design considerations. We have just a 48-inch gravity sewer, again, just gravity, no pumps needed here. The same connection to the Squajacada tunnel would be needed with that Vortex style drop shaft about 400 feet from Northland Avenue. The installation depth here, considering we don't have to come out of the bottom of a tank, is much shallower. We're looking at 15 to 20 feet by the end by the drop shaft structure. So our prescription here is open cut. That will obviously have to be refined as detailed design moves forward. But we think that open cut could work here as in this alternative. As I said before, the modulating gate will be connected to SCADA for automatic control and remote monitoring. And the gate will balance flow between the Humboldt Parkway sewer and the Squajacada Tunnel interceptor during rain events. And again, I'll just steal the screen so everyone can see this clearly. So here's alternative 2 site plan. Again, very similar to alternative 1. We're having the diversion chamber here with our new modulating gate that will be connected to SCADA. And then our 48-inch sewer will, instead of taking a 90 here in Sidney, will be coming to the intersection of Sidney and Lark and running north to that drop shaft structure. Here's that small control panel that I mentioned previously. Here again, no building required, just a small outdoor panel there. Same open cut installation here on this side and back to the vortex style drop shaft here. So one thing really to consider here is we got an extension for our regulatory date based on some of these changes. So we are developing the 30% submittal for alternative 2. We wanted to provide something for the proposers to take a look at to get an idea of what we were thinking for alternative 2. But we are progressing with updating our 30% design to show alternative 2, the more detailed drawings as you'll find for alternative 1 provided in the RFP. We are coordinating with DEC to update the PER and provide the updated information and answer their questions as it relates to alternative 2. So essentially, this is why we are still showing 2 alternatives versus just saying, hey, just the RTC. We still need to confirm that the regulators are in agreement with this alternative as we progress and update the PER. And all of this information will be shared ultimately with the awarded consultant for negotiations. Nadia, you can steal the screen back and move on to the next slide. So here's a project schedule. As I'm currently, as the RFP stands, these dates are a little differing from the RFP. You can see the big one here is the March 2027 final construction documents. The schedules for Edison, Martha, and Sidney were very similar before we began negotiations with alternative 2 with DEC. So we were certainly we'd love to share that timeline, that extension with the ultimately awarded consultant to provide documents about 4 months later than Edison Martha here on the 19th of March. And just important to note that the regulatory date is June 30th, 2027, with the notice to proceed for construction in December 2027, and then ultimately construction complete date by December 31st, 2032. That's it for Sidney. Steve, you can go ahead and take over for Edison Martha.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I think a lot of the OLS tank items that Nick has talked about are pretty repetitive between Edison and Martha. I think maybe the primary one being gravity in, gravity out. I think laying out this design without a pump station was a goal from the get-go, and I think from the Sewer Authority for long-term O&M. For Edison Martha, we have 48-inch gravity inlet sewer coming off the Sejaquita Interceptor and Edison Avenue, gravity into the site through the parking lot there of the charter school, 2.61 million gallon offline storage tank in the eastern portion of the park, 8-foot depth, and then a 24-inch gravity sewer on the effluent side back to Edison Avenue. The design considerations, I think, for this, from a high level, minimizing the footprint there in the park, but also gravity in, gravity out. We've had some ongoing coordination with the Sewer Authority. I think we'll get to later in the slide deck on some of those design considerations to minimize the impact of nearby facilities, below grade access points, and then specifically, as I move on, what the Parks Department has communicated to us. I think maybe we moved on. I think actually, Nadia, I might take over and share just similarly as Nick did with the drawing package, maybe to just communicate this a little bit since we've been working on it with the Parks Department. Access drive we have shown off of the school parking lot. Our diversion structures in Edison Avenue. And then what we've been working on with the Parks Department and what you're seeing here from a high level overview is their conceptual plan that they are working on Roosevelt Park improvements. A lot of what we've been doing for Edison Martha OLS tank is minimizing above ground features in the park. So where our design started was a multi-cell OLS tank to try to minimize parts of the basin being activated. We had some hatches in the open field. The community feedback has been that they would like that to be open, no hatches, aligning any hatches we have with pathways or access drives. So a lot of our maybe coordination for the last few months has been trying to get the design into a point where we're adhering to what we're hearing from the parks. So coming off the diversion structure, we have an influent gate that we can align with the pathways and then an effluent gate or outlet gate structure before going back to Edison Avenue and maybe a little bit more detailed schematic to show some of that with the 48-inch influent and then the OLS tank outline in the park property and then the outlet gate going back to the east towards Edison Avenue. Similarly, our OLS tank has tipping buckets. We have 15 proposed tipping buckets and lanes on the design. And then I think the other piece that is maybe going back to the park diagram and trying to work with the Parks Department, the goal is going to be to get the western half of the park constructed ahead of, due to funding, the OLS tank. Originally, we had a building and structure near the OLS tank. We're currently working with the Sewer Authority on providing a utility room in the field house to supply the water lines and conduit back to the OLS tank. So there'll be some additional coordination with the final designer to pick up where that's left off and then continue on in the final design to tie in the water lines and conduits to the OLS tank. I think that's all I have, Nadia. I can let you take over sharing again. Maybe go to design considerations. Thanks. Yes, the objective, I think fairly straightforward as we're on the call. We have submitted our PER responses to the DEC, so that process is well underway. The maybe differences between the Sidney, Lark, and Edison Martha is really coordination with the parks and the charter school. The parks has Roosevelt Park upgrades slated for this year and next year that we're working around to minimize our footprint on what they build. And then the the charter school really, once the park upgrades are completed, will be utilized for getting the effluent lines through their parking lots and also for haul roads. So there'll be some logistics there to work out with the charter school. Storage tank, 130 feet by 336. Screening was deemed unnecessary earlier on in the process. Tipping buckets for cleaning, as I said. We've been collaborating with Grande on those. I think there's a memo in the RFP for flushing for what we've been working on with the sewer authority, as well as the geotechnical report. There's some rock in the area. We're anticipating rock excavation, but nothing I don't think too terrible. Is actually better than we initially thought from the soil borings. On the control side, the diversion structure, the plan is that the diversion structure won't activate or will have a weir that will not activate the OLS tank in small rain events. And then as rain events increase, the OLS tank will get activated. And then a control strategy for the flushing gates and levels set to operate. And then again, mentioned in a continued coordination with the Parks Department, the school. I think maybe through some of the RFP and PER that Xylem had developed the previous version of the long-term control plan that we've been working off of. Thanks, Nadia. From a schedule standpoint, similar, I think to Edison, Martha, and Sidney Lark, we had start of design March of 2024. However, now a little bit decoupled in the fact that our final design for the consent decree is late 2026, as opposed to early in 2027, with the notice to proceed to construction following in June of 2027. So a lot of the driver there, those late 2026 date, mid 2027 date for design and getting the contractor on board, I think are probably what we see as the maybe critical path to this whole thing is the schedule. And then there's, I think maybe from our initial take at it, some decent time between notice to proceed to construction and then the final consent decree of 2033. So I think that's all for Edison, Martha. Thanks, Nadia.
Thanks, Steve. All right, so Nadia and I are gonna talk briefly about some unique contractual requirements that we want folks to pay attention to. The first thing up is the Community Partnership Program. So some background on that. Through Queen City Clean Waters, Buffalo Sewer is spending millions of dollars each year building and maintaining the infrastructure to provide wastewater treatment, manage CSOs, and protect public health. So with that, the purpose of Buffalo Sewer's new community benefits program, titled the Community Partnership Program, is to leverage those economic and social impacts Buffalo Sewer has in the community with large-scale construction projects, as well as professional services and engineering contracts such as this one. And this will be done by creating an avenue for community partnerships to form with consultants and contractors of Buffalo Sewer. So the Community Partnership Program is designed to deliver long-lasting, positive economic, environmental, social impacts in Buffalo Sewer service area under four primary categories. One, economic development. Number two, education. Three, public and environmental health. And four, workforce development. In regards to partnerships, beneficiaries may include a nonprofit organization that has established and maintains valid nonprofit status under the Internal Revenue Code, Section 501c3. along with all applicable rules and regulations. And in addition, public schools and colleges in Buffalo Sewer Authority's service area. So through these local partnerships, volunteering, financial contributions, Buffalo Sewer's goal is to grow a workforce talent pipeline that supports BSA's core services and ensure that City of Buffalo's residents experience public benefits, including opportunities for generational wealth creation, workforce and business development, education, and improved environmental health. You'll note the option to comply and participate in the community benefits program or community partnership program on the cost proposal. Compliance documents will be provided for those who participate. Okay, Nadia, take it away.
Oh, sorry. I thought I didn't recognize that I was on mute. Yeah, so thank you, Walt. So moving on with some key reminders for contractual requirements is the MWBE and DBE requirements. So as a reminder, Buffalo Sewer has a 30% MWBE participation requirement with specific benchmarks of 5% MBE and 5% WBE. To meet these requirements, consultants are encouraged to take some proactive steps to ensure outreach efforts to engage MWBE firms is done early, include those firms in your solicitations and proposal, and also remember to prepare and include MWBE and DBE utilization plans in appendices S and T. These documents are required to complete for a complete proposal submission. Additionally, SDVOB participation is also encouraged. Failure to include the required appendices may result in an incomplete submission, so it's crucial that you double check compliance before submission. Some design considerations, I think this is a repeat of what has been discussed previously, but this is to ensure functionality, safety, and ease of maintenance for these projects. So some of the key strategy for achieving these measures, one is to minimize equipment inside the tanks. So this will help simplify maintenance and inspections, provide easier access for routine checks, and reduce potential failure points by limiting the amount of internal equipment. Another consideration is managing flow efficiently so that we reduce debris accumulation. So some of the considerations include incorporating cunettes to direct flow and prevent sediment accumulation, using tapered and or rounded corners where possible to minimize areas where debris can settle. Area management and odor control, since these projects will be either in parks or urban areas, proper odor control is very essential, not only to comply with environmental standards, but also a positive experience for surrounding communities. Additionally, these projects, they have confined spaces, so proper ventilation is going to be critical for worker safety and system efficiency, and also just longevity of equipment inside the tanks. Architectural integration for any above ground structures, the goal is to blend seamlessly into the environment. So if, let's say, if there's a path above the tank, consider to make it curved instead of straight, just for a more organic feel. And also this is an opportunity for integration of public art, just adding elements to engage the community. Last but not least, as Steve mentioned, coordination with parks, especially for Edison Martha, is going to be critical for a successful delivery of the project. So in the end, closing, just some key reminders. Just make sure that you read the proposal properly and review the RFP. Review the RFP format and make sure that the outline is followed when you put together your proposal. Review the evaluation criteria, so that's going to be important. another key reminder is a project schedule. As everyone mentioned in the presentation, these are consent decree projects, so timely delivery is critical. If there are opportunities to accelerate the timeline, that would be highly valued. For cost proposal submission, when filling out the cost proposal, clearly indicate whether you're proposing for one project or both. Regardless of the selection, there will be a single technical proposal for both projects. However, the cost proposal and the technical proposal must be submitted in two separate sealed envelopes. And obviously, this also would be included in the addendum that would be issued. Submission details, just physical copies of the proposal must be submitted at City Hall. I know like last minute people can be confused, so just make sure that you read the RFP details to avoid missing any requirements. Deadline for questions is Tuesday, February 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern. If you still have any questions right now, just feel free to include them in the chat or send them via email to Rosie, and all responses will be provided through an official addendum in writing. So just Rosie email for those who don't have it. For any additional resources, procurement opportunities, construction updates, board meeting minutes, please visit buffalosewer.org, or to stay updated on BSA news, make sure to follow BSA on Facebook, LinkedIn, or their official website. So thank you for your time, and back to you, Walt.
Thank you, Nadia. We'll give folks just a few more seconds to type in any questions in the chat they may have. One final reminder for the deadline for questions, next Tuesday, February 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern. Get those to Rosie, review the RFP and the appendices thoroughly, and we look forward to your submission. So with that, thank you everyone for your time. These slides will be issued in the first addendum. A recording will be posted on the BSA website shortly. We thank you all for attending. One last item, I did see a comment in the chat about the microphone, but I'm actually unable to unmute those two numbers. So I will reach out to confirm who those folks are so that we can properly document the attendance sheet, which will also be distributed in the addendum. So thanks everyone for your time. Have a great rest of the week and a good afternoon. Take care.